girls. I'm Uncle James. You know, one of the best memories of my childhood was listening to stories read to me at bedtime by my grandfather, who lived with us at the time. I used to look forward to bedtime because I knew that he would always have a new tale to tell. And now, here's the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, read just for you by Uncle John.
Thank you. One winter, a beautiful queen sat sewing by a window. As she gazed down at the snow-covered garden, she saw a black raven, and her needle accidentally pricked her finger. A drop of blood fell on the snow. The colors were so strong that the queen said to herself, "If only I could have a child as white as snow, as black as a raven, and as red as blood." Not long afterward, the queen had a baby daughter. And when she saw her jet-black hair, snowy white skin, and red lips, she remembered her strange wish on a winter's day and named her Snow White. Snow White was a pretty little girl, but after a few years, sad to say, her mother died and her father married again. The new queen, Snow White's stepmother, was very beautiful too, but she was very proud and vain. She had a magic mirror, and each day she would admire herself in it and ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And the mirror would always reply, "You, O queen, are the fairest one of all." The queen would smile when she heard this, for she knew the mirror always spoke the truth. Years went by, and Snow White grew prettier and prettier, until one day when the queen looked in the magic mirror, the mirror replied, "You, O queen, are fair, 'tis true, but Snow White is fairer now than you." The queen was filled with envy. From that day she hated Snow White, and her anger grew, and finally she called for a hunter and told him to take Snow White deep into the forest and then kill her. "Cut out her heart and bring it back to prove she is really dead," she commanded. The hunter felt very sad. Like everyone in the king's household, he loved Snow White, but he knew he must obey the queen's orders. He took Snow White deep into the forest and pulled out his knife. Snow White fell to her knees. She looked so beautiful that the hunter took pity and told her to hide. He then killed a deer and cut out its heart to take back to the cruel queen. Snow White was frightened in the forest. She started to run here and there through the trees, until in the evening she came to a clearing and found a little house. She wondered if it was a woodman's cottage, where she might be able to stay, so she knocked on the door. There was no answer, so Snow White pushed it open and went inside. There she saw a room all neat and tidy, with a long table laid with 7 places, 7 knives and forks, 7 wooden plates and drinking cups. Snow White was so hungry and thirsty that she ate a little food from each plate and drank a little drop from each cup. She did not want to empty one person's plate and cup only. Beyond the table were 7 little beds, all neatly made. Snow White tried them all out, and the 7th bed was just right. She lay down and fell into a deep sleep, for she was exhausted by her long journey through the forest. The cottage was the home of 7 dwarfs. All day long they worked in a mine nearby, digging diamonds from deep inside the mountain. When they returned home that night, they were startled to see that someone had entered their cottage and taken some food and drink from each place at their table. They were more surprised to find their beds disturbed, until the 7th dwarf found Snow White in his bed and called to the others. The 7 dwarfs gathered around her. They marveled at her beauty, but they decided not to disturb her, for they were kind little men. When Snow White awoke the next day, she met the dwarfs and told them her story. "I have no home now," she said sadly, and at once the dwarfs asked her to stay with them in their cottage. Snow White agreed happily, and each morning when the dwarfs went off to work, she stayed behind and kept their cottage clean and cooked their supper. The dwarfs warned Snow White that when she was alone she must beware of any strangers who might come to the cottage. They suspected that her stepmother had magic powers, and would soon find out that Snow White had not been killed by the hunter. Back at the palace, the queen welcomed the hunter when he returned with the deer's heart. She was happy that once again she was the most beautiful woman in the world. As soon as she was alone, she looked at her magic mirror and said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And to her horror, the mirror replied, "You, O queen, are fair, 'tis true, but Snow White is fairer still than you." The queen shook with anger as she realized that the old hunter had tricked her. She decided that she would seek out Snow White and kill her herself. The queen disguised herself as an old peddler woman with a tray of ribbons and pretty things to sell, and she set off into the forest. When she came to the dwarf's cottage, she knocked and cried out,
"Pretty goods for sale! Pretty goods for sale!"
Snow White came to the door and looked eagerly at the tray. The queen noticed that she was attracted by some lacy ribbons, and so she asked Snow White if she'd like to try one on. Then she tugged the lacing so tight that Snow White could not breathe and fell to the ground as if she were dead. The queen hurried to her palace, sure that this time Snow White was truly dead. When the dwarfs returned that evening, they found Snow White lying on the floor, deathly cold and still. They rushed toward her in horror, but soon noticed that she had a new lacing on her dress, which had been tied too tightly. Quickly they cut it, and Snow White started breathing again. All 7 dwarfs gave a tremendous sigh of relief, as by now they loved Snow White dearly. She told them what had happened, and the dwarfs begged her not to allow strangers into the cottage while she was alone. Meanwhile, back at the palace, the queen asked the mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And the mirror replied, "You, O queen, are fair, 'tis true, but Snow White is fairer still than you." The queen was speechless with rage. She realized that yet another plan to kill Snow White had failed. She resolved to try again, and this time she was determined to succeed. She chose an apple with one rosy red side and one yellow side. Carefully, she injected poison into the red part of the apple and placed it in a basket of apples. The wicked queen, disguised this time as a peasant woman, then set out once more to the forest. Once more she knocked at the dwarf's cottage and waited for Snow White. The queen guessed that Snow White would have been warned not to buy anything from strangers, so she quickly declared that she had nothing to sell. She simply chatted to Snow White, and Snow White became less scared. She offered her an apple as a present. Snow White was tempted as the rosy apple looked delicious, but she refused, explaining that she had been told to accept nothing from strangers. "I will show you how harmless it is," said the disguised queen. "First I will bite it, and if I am unharmed, you will know it is safe for you too." The queen had not poisoned the yellow side, so she took a bite from there. When nothing happened, Snow White stretched out her hand for the apple. She also took a bite, but from the rosy red side. Instantly the poison attacked Snow White, and she fell down as though dead. That evening, when the dwarfs returned, they could not manage to revive her. They looked closely to make sure her dress was not laced too tightly, but they could find nothing different about her. All that night they watched over her, but when morning came, she did not move or breathe or speak, and they decided she must be dead. Weeping bitterly, they laid her in a coffin and placed a glass lid over the top so that all could admire her beauty, even though she was dead. Then they carried the coffin to the top of a hill where day and night they stood guard over their beautiful Snow White. The wicked queen was delighted that day when she looked in her mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And the mirror replied, "You, O queen, are the fairest one of all." She gave a cruel laugh when she heard those words. Then it happened that a prince came riding through the forest and saw the coffin on the hill. Snow White looked so beautiful that he fell in love at once and begged the dwarfs to allow him to take the coffin with him to his own country. The dwarfs loved Snow White too much to permit him to do this, but they agreed to let the prince kiss her. As the prince gently kissed Snow White, he moved her head. The piece of poisoned apple fell from her lips. She stirred, yawned, and stretched a little. Moments later, she was alive again. "Where am I?" she asked, looking at the prince. "Safe with me," replied the prince, and Snow White too fell in love. Far away in her palace, the wicked queen gazed in her mirror, and the mirror said, "You, O queen, are fair, 'tis true, but Snow White is fairer still than you." The queen cursed Snow White in a fury. How had she escaped death once more? By now, the king had discovered what evil deeds the queen had planned and banished her from his kingdom. That night she left the palace, and no one ever saw her or her mirror again. Snow White said farewell to her kind friends, the dwarfs, and rode away with the prince. They were married at his father's castle and lived for a long time afterward in happiness and peace. Good night.